It's time now to take a look at the international newspapers. Leo McGuinn joins us in studio for that. Leo, how, first of all, is this 80th anniversary being marked in the papers?
Of course, it's a huge day in the world and specifically in Europe, and I'll take you through a few of the front pages across Europe this morning, starting here in France with L'Humanité. If the echo of their voices fades, we will perish. That's what their front page reads this morning, making the point that the further we get from these horrific events, the more chance there is of forgetting, therefore, the need to constantly remember the horrors. Libération have a direct message from some of the very few survivors who remain. There are only a handful of us left, they say, so we're counting on you. This comes from 4 women who have a combined age of nearly 400. They survived the concentration camp when, of course, millions didn't. But in 10 years' time, there will be no survivors, no direct witnesses, and anti-Semitism is once again flaring up, according to this article, so people really need to remember. In the UK, the Daily Express have this really striking front page this morning. This is 94-year-old survivor Susan Pollack urging us to never forget. She tells her story of being sent to Auschwitz from Hungary. Her mother and father were murdered, and she was only kept alive because she lied about her age. She said she was 15 instead of 13, and she was put to work. Speaking 80 years on, she says that anti-Semitism has the capacity to raise itself like a devil, and believes that the government, specifically in the UK, need to create a specific law in order to eradicate it. There's currently no specific UK law which specifically prohibits anti-Semitism.
So lots of calls there, Leo, from survivors to saying to never forget, but a lot of research saying that it's only, in a certain sense, been 80 years, and yet in people's memories today, it's not so strong.
Of course, and we're talking about how we must never forget, but there's a couple of really worrying surveys that come out this morning. This is in The Guardian. They tell us that a third of young adults in the UK are unable to name Auschwitz or any other Nazi death camp. This is according to a study of 18 to 29-year-olds. That number goes up to nearly 50% in the US. And the problem isn't just a lack of knowledge, there's also rising levels of denial and disinformation seen on social media. Nearly 25% of those asked have said that they've seen direct Holocaust denial online. This isn't the only worrying study coming out of the UK this morning. This is a piece in The Times who report that most young people are in favour of turning the UK into a dictatorship. 52% of Gen Z, aged between 13 and 27, said they thought the UK would be a better place if a strong leader was in charge who did not have to bother with parliament and elections. 33% suggested that the UK would be better if the army was in charge. The research also shows a rise in misogyny amongst young men. 45% of male respondents have said we've gone so far in promoting women's equality that we're discriminating against men. A similar proportion agrees that things have gone far enough when it comes to giving women equal rights. So a bit of a downer, and it's not quite the uplifting news that you're looking for from the younger generation.
Very cheery and uplifting read this morning in those papers, Leo, and it comes on the back of comments made by President Donald Trump that he wants to clean out Gaza. How have those comments been going down in the papers?
As you can imagine, they've been hugely controversial in the UK. The Guardian have this headline: Trump's accused of ethnic cleansing over the comments. The US president said that he would like hundreds of thousands of people to move to neighbouring countries, either temporarily or long-term. A Palestinian rights group responded by saying cleaning Gaza immediately after the war would, in fact, be a continuation of the war. It would be akin to ethnic cleansing. In the US, the Washington Post have this opinion piece this morning, noting that the comments have put their Arab partners on their guard. They call it Trump's first big blunder. They say Trump's offhand comments amplifies a new trend, his love for starting unnecessary fights over pet projects. Think Greenland, Panama, Canada, and of course the Gulf of Mexico. This piece finishes by telling us that he can't forget that foreign policy isn't a one-way street, because even superpowers need friends. Over in the Middle East, unsurprisingly, it's garnered a real negative reaction. Arab News, which is a Saudi-backed publication, reports Egypt's objection to the suggestion as they've expressed their steadfast support for the Palestinian people. Talking of Egypt, Israeli paper Haaretz have this article detailing what Trump's plan would mean for Egypt and Jordan, because if Trump is serious, they would both need a strategy. One option: simply refuse, hoping that the US president would understand why their countries weren't keen to allow hundreds of thousands of people into their country. Other option is to say yes, but produce a list of conditions, for example, that the number of resettled Gazans be in the low tens of thousands and be given a definitive timeline for their return to Gaza.
Okay, well, Leo, you've also picked up on an article about North Korea where leader Kim Jong Un is reportedly struggling to keep the country's youth in check.
Yeah, a lot about the youth this morning in the papers. It's a really interesting long read in the Wall Street Journal, actually. Kim Jong Un, as we know, enjoys absolute power across North Korea, seen as godlike by many people. But one threat that looms large, supposedly, is disloyalty from the country's youth. He's particularly worried about foreign media trickling through, giving North Koreans a rare glimpse at K-pop or Hollywood movies, and being in possession of either of them can actually lead to a death sentence. So what's Kim's plan to combat this? It's the Hero Youth Shock Brigade, a group consisting of 300,000 teenagers and 20-somethings designed to keep the young occupied with hard labour. It's one of a dozen paramilitary organisations where North Koreans are plucked from their everyday jobs to accelerate major construction projects around the country. Some voluntarily join, but many others are recruited forcibly and face widespread malnutrition. Construction normally begins before sunrise and often lasts until after midnight. With those involved, work to the bone. Some deaths have been reported, all in the name of keeping the youth in line in North Korea.
Okay, thanks for that uplifting press review, Leo. Liam McGuinn there with our international press review.